Well, the funny thing about that story that they talk about was anytime that I was doing something questionable, like I could be straight-laced, 90% of the time or 70% of the time. And if I'm doing something that's like just off, Tress always there. Right? You'd be hanging out with the guys and F-bomb or something like this, and Tress would turn around and say, nice. And it's just like, I didn't see him standing there, not focused. But you said something about not leave it up to the judges. And I guess, having the luxury of having been around a guy that's had tremendous results, watching him on the sidelines, being right there, the guy never argued with officials. And that's one of the things that was driving me crazy the other day, watching Ryan Day lose his mind. As a leader, your team is watching you.
Right.
And if you lose your mind and you make it look like the officials are against us, your team's going to quit playing.
Right. If you're at the top and you're chaotic, the rest of the team's going to be chaotic.
The only thing that Tress would ever say to officials that I remember was, what did you see so I can coach my guys? He never argued that didn't happen. He would say, what did you see so that I can make the corrections on my end? Smart. And if he heard us in the locker room at halftime or, mostly at halftime of complaining about the officials, he'd say, guys, if it comes down to an official's call, whether we win or lose a game, you didn't deserve to win it. And that got us focused right back where we needed to be.
All right. Well, again, I appreciate that. I got something special coming up for you right here. This is a little something that we like to call, I haven't done this for a while. There we go. A little something I like to do with my guests every now and then, a little something that we like to call rapid fire.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah. All right. So now, there's going to be 2 parts of rapid fire right here. And the first part is you need to choose either or.
Okay.
And then the second part is I'm going to say something and you need to say the first word that comes to mind.
Okay.
This is going to be good.
This is going to be fun.
Oh yeah. All right, so either or. Number 1, the ability to fly or to be immortal.
Fly.
Number 2, Star Wars or Star Trek.
Star Wars.
Number 3, to be a head coach in the NBA, MLB, or the NFL.
NFL.
Mountains or beaches.
Beaches.
And number 5, Jordan or LeBron.
Jordan, 100%.
All right. Okay. So now here we go to the second part. So now I'm going to say something. You got 5 more coming up to you, and the first word that comes to mind. Youngstown State University.
Championships.
Number 2, Biden.
Retire.
Trump.
Champion.
Kamala.
Fake.
Wellington.
Great foundational place. Proud to be from it.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So we always like to do the rapid fire in there, have a little fun. Again, there's always I have a list of people that I always like to have to come on the show, and there's always some that I kind of flirt with. That'd be kind of cool, but I knew having you come on here would be great. It's we go back a long way, and it's again to see what you've accomplished is you may not hear it as much as you should, but I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great stuff, man. It really it's inspiring to know that there are a couple of goofballs from out in the sticks in Ohio, and then again to see you up there and getting shout outs and winning national championships and stuff. It's awesome in every sense of the word.
Well, and Scott, I got to say that what you've accomplished has been, as I look back, we were talking a few years ago. I remember we sat down and had a couple Kool-Aids at Forts, and there was one thing you said that made a tremendous impact on me. I was very blessed several years ago to get explained what I consider the truth as far as taught, and saved by, the blood of Jesus Christ. And the one thing you said to me that I thought was tremendously incredible was that you didn't like when people always say, well, what you need to do is. Like when people will talk to you about what you need to do is, and it's such a big turnoff. And I took that to heart. I said, you're absolutely right, because nobody likes to be preached to. Nobody likes to be like, and I
would
made it a
shut
point.
down when people when
No,
they start
100%.
doing this right here. I
Yeah.
shut down every time.
Yeah. Now,
Because
if
usually those people are very flawed.
well, the reality is that all of us,
Correct.
whether we profess as Christians or not, we're all very flawed. We've all fallen short of the glory. And so for anybody to say what you need to do, I always found it a lot more effective to try to live an example and try to be an example where you are more effective, to where they ask you about how you got to what you're doing versus saying, hey, you need to. But you taught me that. And I think it's so true, because when you think about everybody that is in your face and telling you what you have to do, all that stuff, and how it just turns people off. And so that's what you've been a tremendous influence on me in there, in that space. So
Well, I'm glad I could.
and you're somebody that I have a ton of respect for too.
thank you.
Versus, the artistic capabilities, the fighting. That's what we were just talking about. Before we sat down, being in tremendous shape. I've got to get there. I've got to get back there. I got so sloppy.
You know what to do.
Out of the way.
There's nothing I can tell you don't know. Come on, you know what to do.
Right.
It just do it.
But I like to eat. Those wings are so. Those wings at Red Iron Grill. Are the
It's been
best.
a while since I've had them, but I've heard.
They're the best
Look,
wings.
You may not believe
traveled-
this. I am a fiend for ice cream. A fiend for ice cream.
Ooh.
I love ice cream more than anything, and I there's not right now, but usually there's at least a pint or two in the freezer.
From
love it.
what's your poison?
Jenny's. There's Jenny's ice cream and there's nothing else. And it's made in Cuyahoga Falls, so it's not far from here. Jeni. You can get them, and I just had, matter of fact, for Thanksgiving, I had the peanut butter and chocolate flecks. It's the best ice cream I've ever had.
Well, we're gonna reach out to them after the show and see if we can get a sponsorship
That's
or
what I'm
maybe a
saying.
supply or
Hey,
something
hook
here.
us up.
Anybody know anybody?
I'm a
at
fan.
Jenny's?
I'm a fan. Matter of fact, I was in Meyer a couple months ago, and I was getting pissed because they only have, Jenny's has a couple dozen or even more, probably even 30, 40 flavors now. But in Meyer's, they only have 4 flavors. But there was a guy who was coming around, and it was funny because I got into a 3-minute discussion with this guy right there in the aisle about, no, man, you want to get the Johnny one, you want to get there, you want to get the honey Briscoe, blah, blah. And guess what? He ended up getting 2 out of the 4 that were there, and I'm willing to bet I changed his life. It's that good. I'm not kidding. Jenny's ice. Although, here's the thing: if anybody out there from Jenny's Ice Cream is listening, if you're open to some feedback, this is what I'll say. I did get they had a lemon bar, phenomenal. But ice cream, there's a certain point where you can kind of get out of your lane. If you're going to have like the chocolate and peanut butter like I had for Thanksgiving, it's fantastic. But they had a jelly donut flavored ice cream. And when I was eating it, I wanted a jelly donut. I didn't want the jelly donut ice cream.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Right.
But anything that I've had, like I've had the cookies and cream, and I've had the vanilla, and they're standard. It's the
I
best.
struggle with the jalapeno ones. Like
Not a
I
fan.
like spicy food and stuff, but having that spice in ice cream just, I don't know.
Not a fan. I'm not the spicy ice cream. I don't know about that.
Right.
But I am. Look, if you're gonna get lean, eat a lot of lean meat, eat a lot of lean protein. I eat a lot of lean chicken, which can get very boring unless you're into hot sauce.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I'm into different hot
Spicy,
sauces and stuff
definitely.
like that, and it's look. I love sweets. In the end, what it boils down to, it's either sugar or carbs that are going to be the problem for most people.
Right.
For me, it's sugar. I like carbs. but
How
I
do you
love
know the
sugar.
difference? How do you determine the difference? Is
As
it
far-
just a matter of how your body responds to what
A
you
lot
eat?
of
Is
it,
it just
yeah.
trial and error?
At our age, it can be. With athletes, it's a little different because if you're getting if your body is putting out that much effort, especially at that young age, you can kind of eat what you want, which is what sucks when you stop doing that.
Well, when I was 40, I went from 318, dropped down to back. I think the lowest I got was 247, and I was
remember
running,
this.
and I was getting back into really where I felt like I was sprinting as well as when I played.
I remember this was like 2010. I remember
Yeah.
when you did this, because I
And
remember on Facebook.
for whatever reason, I cut carbs.
Mm-hmm.
I really watched the carb intake, and my sugar ended up spiking. It was the craziest thing.
Well, it depends on what type of sugar you're getting too, because you got to remember, is even if you're taking it, like for me, my sugar, more often than not, my sugar comes in through drinks. I love sweet drinks, and especially when I'm working on my art. I love sipping on cherry flavored whiskey, which
There
is
you go.
it's a sugar based booze. So there's a lot of sugar in that. It in the end, if you're taking in something like a Diet Coke, which says it still has sugar in it, although it's not sugar, you're still going to get you're still going to get a spike in your what's it, the glycose. You're still going to get a glycose spike. You're still going to have that. Your body's still going to metabolize it the same way. So even though it doesn't have sugar in the drink, or you get a Coke Zero, Coke, it still has sugar in it. So you're still going to take that in. In the end, what I recommend is people ask me what kind of diet. I stick to the paleo diet, which is simply just food, which is I get my vice is I love ice cream, which I mentioned before, but I also love sugar drinks. But I eat a lot of meat, a lot of vegetables.
Yeah.
A lot of meat, a lot of vegetables. Not much when it comes to fruit, with the exception of I love cottage cheese with either peaches in it or
You using canned or natural peaches?
yeah, just canned. Yeah. Sometimes
Sugary syrup.
or a lot. Yeah, it is. I know it is,
Right.
I like when I'm getting, if I'm having a meal or if I'm having some cottage cheese, and 80% of it is cottage cheese and 20% of it is sugar and fruits. Yeah, it's all right. Because again, the thing is, when it comes to workout, I just keep it simple. I'll do 3 days a week of strength training and 3 days a week of cardio. And cardio is either running or boxing. And strength training is I mix it up between upper body, lower body, and full body.
That boxing is no joke for conditioning.
I love it.
I just
I love
when I was just out of school, I was training with a buddy of mine that was in a fraternity, was a black belt in Shotokan karate. Mm-hmm. And so we were training a little bit, but then for conditioning, we'd put the headgear on, put the boxing guards
awesome.
on, and we would go, and it's amazing you're watching a boxing match and you see the guy like getting tired. You're just like, just hit him. And you're like, you got nothing left after that 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever
Right.
we were doing. Like we do a round for like 5 minutes and you get to the point where you're like, the gloves felt like they weighed 400 pounds,
Yeah, your
just
arms are jello. Yeah,
Oh,
you
my
can't
gosh.
move. Yeah, it's the biggest thing is, especially when it comes, as we were talking before, like when it comes to in football, it's rare that you're going to go whistle to whistle more than a minute. It's rare that happens.
No, you're 4 to 6 seconds of,
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like if it's a
chaos.
30-second play, that's a long time. A minute you almost never see.
No, you don't
But-
even see that long, really.
but
it takes a guy 10 or 11 seconds to go from goal line to goal line.
Right. Whereas
So-
in a ring or a cage, you're minutes at a time. So the word that I always used whenever I'm training somebody, even if we're just doing a conditioning training, is pace. A great example is the one guy that, the lineman I was training. It's just like, look, you're not going for 30 seconds. You need to go for 3 minutes. So if we're going to do a 30-second drill on this box jump here,
Right.
what I always say is, I don't care how many jumps you get. I care about the pace you keep for 30 seconds. Because if the first 4 seconds you get 7 jumps, and then at the end of 30 seconds you end up with 9 jumps, that's a terrible pace. So you're going to get broken if we need to go for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. You need to control that pace more than anything. So, like example, when I run, I'll run 3 miles all the time. Once I hit the 1.5 mile mark, I start going up every lap. I start going up just a 0.1 on every lap. So it started at 6 miles an hour. And then once I hit 1.5 miles, I end up at 6.6 miles to finish up the 3 mile run. Why? I'm going faster on that last lap. Now, if I went from 6 to 6.6, it's going to kill me.
Right.
But if I go 6.1, no big deal. 6.2, 6.3.
Gradually. It's turning up the heat on the boiling front.
Correct. And that's the same way that I will drill. And when I'm training somebody, like case in point, if we're doing box jumps for 30 seconds and you got 25 in the 30 seconds, great. That's your zero barrier now. You can't get less than 25 when you do this.
Right.
Boom, boom. Now, the big question is always, okay, you just did 25 box jumps. What happens when I throw punches and kicks at you now? Can you defend? Can you react? Can you move? So there's so much chaos and stuff going on. It's always about pace. I need to inflict damage. I need to defend. I need to move. I need to counter. I need to get a new angle. And then I need to breathe on top of all of that. So the biggest thing is understanding pace. And the best way to understanding pace, stay calm. Because if the analogy that I was taught and that I always use is if you go out in there into a ring or a cage, try to imagine like a scuba diver, there's 2 tanks on your back. One of them is your cardio. Now, you've earned that through hard work. A lot of that is genetic, sure, but hard work, getting your pace up that we talked about, get that cardio going. Great. Okay, cool. You control that. The second tank is your anxiety. It's like hitting the NOS in a race car. You got one shot at that anxiety. So a great example for that in the UFC is when Conor McGregor fought Jose Aldo and got Jose Aldo so pissed off he wanted to kill Conor. Conor stepped out of the way, landed that knockout left hand, and knocked him out in 13 seconds.
Right.
Because even if you're in better shape than me, if I've got you so emotional that you want to rip my heart off, and rip my heart out, I'm cool and I'm calm and I'm relaxed, and everything you come at me, and, by the way, and I'm also in great shape, I can control my pace, you're going to burn through that anxiety, and especially if we've got 15 minutes or 25 minutes to fight, I'm going to own you. And again, even if you have that flurry of 30 seconds, even if it's a flurry for 2 rounds, I got 3 more rounds with you.
It's so interesting you say that because, I tell people that when I played, I wasn't going to overpower you. I mean, I was a 6 foot, 240 pound tight end in a 6'5" world. So I wasn't going to overpower anybody. I would get into people's heads. Smart. Whereas the first play of the game, I knew that an official wasn't going to throw a flag for holding. I would come off the ball. I would literally grab the guy and take him down, and just to see how he responded. Now, the All-Americans, most of the guys would get up wanting to fight. He's whining to the officials and that. I'm messing with him all night.
You got him.
The guys the All-Americans, they just went back to the huddle. They didn't say a word, and I was just like, oh, man.
Business.
This is going to be a long night. And
combat sports are like that, too.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And if I could mess with them, if I could do something to get him whining and complaining, I'm taking him out of his game, and it would generally go in my favor.
When it works for you, it's a great strategy. When it doesn't, like you said, a great example for that back in the UFC is when Conor took on Khabib.
Mm-hmm.
Khabib took over the division when Conor left to go box and do his whiskey thing. Conor comes back, and in my opinion, I think Conor knew going in, okay, I'm overmatched against this guy.
Right.
But if I'm going to talk about you and your family and your religion and this and that, and I'm going to take my whiskey and I'm going to toast it with the boss right here and I'm doing this all in front of the world, if I get you emotional, it'll work. But
100%. 100%.
It didn't work against that man. If you watch all the conferences leading up to it, Conor's behaving like Conor, and Khabib just sitting there like, October 6th, we have date. We October 6th. October 6th, we find out. And if you watch that fight over, in the second round, when Conor is on his back against the cage, Khabib is standing over top of him, and he's not getting down on his knees to finish. He's standing over him. He could have gotten down on his knees, and he didn't. He stood over top of him, raining down punches and elbows like a schoolboy on a schoolyard. And as he's doing that, he's saying to Conor, let's talk now.
Right.
So Conor McGregor, for all the money he has and all the clout that he has and all the Lamborghini yachts and everything he has and all the 1,200 count thread count silk sheets that he has, when he wakes up in the middle of the night and he's sweating, he's thinking about that man over top of him, smashing his face, saying, let's talk now.
Mm-hmm.
So when it doesn't work.
Well, when it doesn't, see, and even in the game of football, and that I would even teach kids that I was playing or coaching, and say, hey, you don't have to, especially when you're playing against a team, like I remember being in Fort Wayne and Carmel we'd play against Carmel in the playoffs, and these guys are all 6'6", 280 across the front
That's
coming
monsters.
out. They're huge. They're monsters.
Yeah.
But it's like trying to help a kid understand. It's like you don't have to blow that guy off. You're not going to. Right. You've got to get in that guy's way long enough.
Toe to toe, you're not going to win.
No, but you've got to get in his way long enough, or the coach has got to be smart enough. We've got to be smart enough to get you in a position to maybe have a tackle helping you, double team, or something to neutralize him long enough for your back to make a cut.
Yeah.
Because the idea, I don't expect you to come out and blow him off the ball. It's not going to happen. It's ludicrous.
Right.
But you got to be able to. It's not about that. It's about doing your job and being effective.
Well, it's like we were saying before. It gets back into that mentality, the strategy again. Whether you're a general or you're a coach, it's like, okay, strength, weakness, weakness, strength. How do we maneuver this around?
Yep.
To win.
Right.
And and make no mistake, combat sports is politics too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the analogy that I like to use in this recent election is like, look, not only the legacy media that I already talked about a little bit, but Kamala Harris, when it came time for the election, I felt like to bring it back to a sports analogy, let's say you played 10 games throughout the year, and every team you played were only allowed to have 5 players on the field. And you had 11. And you went 10-0, and you won by 80 points in every game. And then you get to go against Marshall, and it's 11 on 11.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that's what a lot of this election was, where it was just like, okay, it's clear who the legacy media was rooting for.
No doubt.
Clear. And if you don't think that, well, then clearly you're not being honest.
I think you have to look at the articles or the storylines and what they talk about. When you have everything negative against Trump, everything, it's like, come on, you can't tell me that there's something that he did right. And that's where I think when you talk about politics and all that, that's why I don't pay attention to the mainstream media, because they've been wrong on so many different sides on what they've
consistently, without apology, by the way.
Yes, and they don't come up, and no correction stories, from the laptop to Russia to all this, and it's just, to me, it's like you've lost credibility, and you're slanted one direction.
Right, and it's so clearly slanted.
Right.
And here's the thing: if Donald Trump is the absolute worst human being, like they make him out to be, then why do you have to lie about him?
Right. Well, and I say as somebody, because I everybody knows I voted for Trump.
Yeah.
And I've been
you've been
and
outspoken
I've been
for a
outspoken
long
about
time.
it.
Yeah.
But the thing is that you think for a second, like when he said Mexico, I'm going to have Mexico pay for the wall. Do you think any of us? I didn't think that Mexico was going to open their checkbook. It was a way that he was going to get it paid for through some sort of result.
This guy makes deals, and he understands that by saying that to a microphone and a camera, then in about 8 months he's going to be sitting down to somebody to talk about some type of a deal. That's what this guy does.
Well, and I've heard people say, he went bankrupt. He filed bankruptcy. It's like a lot of people file bankruptcy.
Sure did.
It doesn't make them bad people. It may, in some cases, there's laws out there that protect people from losing all their assets by filing bankruptcy and by getting. I mean, Walt Disney filed bankruptcy. Is he a bad guy, or was he a bad guy?
Well,
now
Look, here's the thing: when it comes to politics and a lot of times when it comes to religion too, I always like to tie it back to sports. Here's what I mean: if you are a Cleveland Browns fan, die-hard Cleveland Browns fan, that's your team, that's your team, that's your team. And then you hear that Ben Roethlisberger is putting his hands on the hostess from Chili's. Right. Well, then you want him kicked out of the league, and you want any game he's ever won taken away, including his Super Bowls. But if you're a Steelers fan, you want him to sit one half of one preseason game, and that's it.
Right.
It's the exact same thing.
Right.
So the idea that when you look at the Biden administration, since I've been an adult, I have never seen an administration that was worthy of ridicule as much as the behavior of people in this administration.
Right.
But there was next to nothing when it came to it. Why? Because they're on the wrong team, and you got to root for this team. It's like when you stack the deck so long, and you look at the debates, and you look at the things that the first debate with Trump and Biden, in my opinion, I think they sent Biden out there as a sacrificial lamb. In my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion from people that I listen to that happen to be right about certain things.
Right.
Joe Biden spent his entire life wanting to be president of the United States, and he got to be president of the United States, and his body started to deteriorate. And then we were told it wasn't.
Right.
And we were told it wasn't, and his body started to deteriorate. He and his wife didn't want to give up the gig, and then they were forced to by his performance. That debate doesn't usually happen until September. They happened in June.
Mm-hmm.
To put him out there, to show the world that this man wasn't capable of it, and to get the other candidate out there. And I feel bad. Again, most of my life I've absolutely leaned left, and I feel bad for the Democratic Party because when I would listen to John F. Kennedy talk, I'd be inspired.
Absolutely.
When I would listen to Bill Clinton talk, say what you want about his personal behavior, he was inspiring. He was good at
He could move people. He could set a vision.
Barack Obama was a great talker, a great spokesman. Say what you want about his politics, about his policies. We'll get into that, but he was a great speaker. And when I would see Kamala Harris, I felt like I was watching a Manchurian Candidate. Meaning, I felt like this was somebody who was so. Now again, Trump he's the bull in the china shop, and then we had somebody who was so completely controlled. And when somebody would ask a direct question, and she was not able to answer it, or I shouldn't say not able.
She wouldn't have to.
Wasn't willing.
She wouldn't have to answer it.
For a lot of that,
Nobody
yes.
would hold her accountable to answer it.
And then, just like if you guys played against 5 people every day or every week, and then the championship game you had to play against 11. Well, that's what happened. Is she got to go play against 11, and the American public said, "We're not buying it.
Yeah,
we're done."
Well, I don't know how you go from having the lowest. Well, first off, politically, I think you and I are more similar. I think than we are, because I remember, I voted for Clinton's. I was raised in a Democratic house.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the guy that lived across the street from me, a great buddy of mine, Herman Porter, he was the uncle to Terry Porter, who was an NBA basketball player and the coach of the Bucks.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
And I remember having a distinct conversation with him. We're enjoying some libations and solving the world problems. And he goes, he says to me, he said, we were talking, and I was going on a conservative rant about something. And he goes, "You're a Republican, aren't you?" I said, "No, I'm not a Republican. I'm a Democrat." He looked at me like it was the dumbest thing I had ever said. And it was at that point that I realized, I'm like, man, I'm sitting here, so I don't know these sides. I got to get myself educated on what side is what and who's for what and stuff. And and as you studied politics, I've seen, and you mentioned it earlier, is how far left, I think how far extreme both sides have gone, that they've come away from each other. Whereas, the the JFK Democrats, the Scoop Jacksons, the people that were more in the middle, I think are identified with. And that's kind of the household that I was in,
Well, if you listen to stuff that like Clinton would say back in the 90s, he would talk about how the borders are going to be secure.
100%.
And
getting people off welfare.
Well, here's something that's very interesting, too. Whenever I get around somebody that tells me that Trump is a bigot, well,
that's a tough conversation.
Well, here's one fact. Donald Trump is the only, or was the first, not only now, but he was the first president that was pro-gay marriage coming into the presidency.
Mm-hmm.
First one ever. So to label that person a bigot is difficult for me.
Well, and I think the people that know him, that are around him, that, he has people from all races and backgrounds
He did a
around him.
petition to do same-sex marriage at Mar-a-Lago not too long ago. I remember hearing about that. So it's just like, look, and again, if all day long I called you a Nazi and a bigot and a homophobe and all of these certain things, and then all of a sudden you moved in upstairs, and then we're hanging out, having a drink, and taking a picture and smiling together. Oh, at best, that doesn't add up.
No.
At worst, well, I'm full of shit.
Mm.
And again, when it comes down to politics and certain things like that, what matters to me more than anything is how somebody behaves. And the idea that, I grew up in thinking like, two people of the same sex want to get married? Sure. People want to grow pot in their house? Sure. I don't have a problem with any of that. And then once it turns into, wait a minute, Leah Thomas probably should not be competing. You're a bigot. Wait, what? No, I deal with athletes. I coach athletes. That's not right. What's the matter with you, Scott? Are you a bigot? No.
It's the fact that a male body is designed so much bigger, stronger, oxygen intake, whatever, that it's unfair. It's absolutely unfair.
Well, here's the one thing that ends up kind of ending the whole argument is we can sit here and talk about Leah Thomas's and other examples all day long. How come there is no example of one single person converting from a female to a male that's coming in and dominating sports?
Right.
Not one.
Good point.
And I can't think of any. And as far as I know, there is no rule that the NFL does not accept women. I'm willing to bet that if there was a Princess Diana out there that really could do the things that character could do, that any team in the NFL would be willing to put a jersey on her.
No doubt.
And give her the ball.
Right.
Because sports, in my opinion, are the ultimate meritocracy. Because the idea that, your Marge shots and things like that, you're going to have that. But even Marge shot, here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing, everybody. If I owned a sports team, and let's say I'm a horrible racist, and I own my sports team, and I hate anybody other than white people, but I have all the races that are, whatever you want to check down the list, whatever, that are on my team, because I want to win a championship. If I hate you, but I don't do anything to you, I don't give a shit. I don't care. If I owned a sports team and you happen to be a part of a different race and I didn't like that race and I hated that race for whatever reason, but I paid you big money to go out and win a championship for me, but when behind closed doors I sat there and cursed you, who cares?
Right.
I don't care. Guess what? I don't care. There's a difference between hate speech, hate think, and hate crime. There's a difference.
100%.
Now,
100%.
If I hired you and you were of a different race, and then I fired you and didn't pay you because I just got off on that, that's a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
But if I hated that race and hired that race and won championships with that race, then how I feel, I don't care. It's the same thing. It's just like, you know what? I really, 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 really want to burn buildings down. Scott, how many buildings have you burned down? None. Oh, well, okay. Then you're not really a problem.
Right.
But I really want to do it. Okay, but you're going to burn any buildings down? No, I'm not going to do that. It's going to get me in trouble.
Well, it's called sanity.
Right.
It's called being sane about.
Right.
To me, I think racism is ridiculous to me.
Agreed.
It's why anybody's color of anybody's skin has to do with absolutely anything today. And it's what's irritating to me is that it's like, can't we just all be Americans?
Well,
why does it matter whether you're white,
it doesn't.
brown and yellow?
It doesn't.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. And what happens is There are a lot of people out there, powerful people, that talk into a microphone and a camera that make a living off of people being angry about race relations.
Right.
There's a big money in that. And I remember growing up in a little town called Wellington and saying things like, wow, when we elect a black man or a black woman, cool, racism's done. And then we did. And then we reelected one. And ever since then, it was doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on banging the drum on how racist our country is. And I mean, like, okay, the analogy I like to use is, we all know the ride at Cedar Point where you get into the boat and you go way up on this side and way up on this side and way up on this side and way up on this side. And sometimes you find yourself in a certain point. A good example would be right around 1990, 1991, when all the music was Motley Crue and the hair bands and all this nonsense, and we just had our fill of it, and all of a sudden here comes Nirvana. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have this push and pull. And it's not a secret. In the 60s, race relations were very challenging.
Yep.
In the 70s and in the 80s and in the 90s, guess what? We're right around in this middle area here, and then Barack Obama comes in, and we're not racist at all. And what happens is double, triple down, bang that drum. Even though we have a black president, we still have much, much, much more work to do. Mm-hmm. Why? Because my business relies on people being angry about race.
Yeah.
So we're going to go up here, and what happens is we'll go up here, and all of a sudden you get the George Floyd and all this type of crazy nonsense over here. And I think possibly with this last election, we're getting back into more of this, because the identity politics of, if you look this way or you sleep with this person or you identify with this, then you have to vote this way. I think that people are over that.
No.
And the idea that being labeled a bigot or this or whatever because you pulled the lever for this person or that person, people aren't afraid of that anymore. Mm-mm. And although, again, the legacy media, I know that they're scared about that, I think that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I do. It gets back into when, even little outlets like this where people can sit down and talk about stuff, there's a great quote that says, people are suckers for the truth. And I like that. And I think that it gets back into, not only you've been vocal about how you feel about politics, you've also been very vocal about your faith too. And I appreciate what you said, that I made an impact with the, what I told you about when it comes to religion is, I feel like what it boils down to is, if you have something that you can't see or touch or smell or taste, and you use that as a weapon, whether it be your religion or your faith or your gender or your skin color or your sexual proclivities or anything like that, if you're going to use that stuff as a weapon, anything like that is just you're just a shitty person. Mm-hmm. You are a weak, shitty person. And if you're going to have to say, if I opened up every sentence with, as a heterosexual white man, I'd be laughed out of the room.
Right.
And yet people get to do that with impunity. And that's not right at all. Because like you said, either you're a human being or you're not. And if you're a human being, great. Sit down, we can have a discussion, we can learn something about each other. But if you're going to sit here and you're going to do nothing but point fingers or put the hands over your ears and la 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 la, I'm not going to listen, I'm not going to this, how the hell are you going to grow? It's the same thing. It's like if getting back to the mainstream media one last time, is if everybody you invite on your show thinks the same thing that you do,
how are you going to grow?
No, yeah, but how interesting is that?
Right.
That's not interesting at all.
No, I think, I've studied John Maxwell. I'm a John Maxwell coach, speaker, and trainer. And one of the things that John always said is that 2% of people think, 3% of people think they think, and 95% would rather die than think.
Wow.
And that's why I really think we have political parties today.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have to think. I want to identify myself as the R or the D, and then, okay, does what they say somewhat make sense? Okay, yeah, all right, I'm pulling that lever and that's it. And then now I'm going to fight to defend that position,
right,
rather than think about, hey, does this position really make sense? Can government really make it better for us when they waste so much money?
Government can't even thin traffic out after a baseball game.
Right.
You know, what are you talking about?
So that's why I don't, I'm a proponent of lesser government than bigger government, and it's, and we can get into discussions and all that, but anything that we can take and give back to the states and let the states determine for themselves, I think is better. And that's all that anything was done with this abortion thing and the Roe versus Wade thing is let the states decide that. The U.S. government doesn't have to worry about that. The U.S. government has to worry about protecting us and protecting our borders. And that's it. Let everything else fall within the state governments.
Agreed. Let's get the borders secure. Let's fill in the potholes. Let's make sure that the next time the train gets derailed in East Parliament, that we get that taken care of. That type of stuff.
Yeah. I'm not against immigration. I think we get some great people that come across the border and do some great things to help us. Sign the guest book.
Right. Exactly.
Come in through the gate. Right. There's a process. There's a law. There's laws that we have to become an American citizen, and this is a land that's built on immigration.
And when you talk to people that have gone through that process and ask them what they think about the people that are hopping over, and getting the special treatment that they've been getting, they're the ones that are more pissed off about it than people that are born here.
No doubt.
And rightfully so, because you've had to jump through the hoops. You've had to go through all the process. You had to take the steps. And it takes a long time to do that. And you have to, there's a whole vetting process in which you have to go through. But yet, look, the bottom line is, if you're going to let people into your home without checking who they are and why they're here and who they're with and how long they're going to be here, well, you're up to something.
Mm-hmm.
Period. I don't know what that is. That's the question. I can't answer that. Because if I opened my front door and left it unlocked and people just hung a sign outside that said, "Hey, come on in," and then all of a sudden, next morning there's 30 people in here, I'm wondering what's happening. That's obviously that's disingenuous. That's bullshit.
Right.
So what's going on?
And the whole idea of gun control, but yet the people that are what our politicians have armed security around them, but yet we can't protect ourselves. That's just mindful. It's just crazy to me. And people talking about you can't have now fully automatic weapons. 100%. Who needs a fully automatic weapon? But I think having high capacity magazines. Hey, if I got people coming at my house and defending my house or invading my house that aren't supposed to be there, and you're going to limit me to 5 rounds,
right?
I'm dead.
Well, again, I know how to handle myself. And I can, with my bare hands, I can defend myself, maybe one other person. With a weapon, I can defend property. I can defend multiple groups of people. And, the bottom line is to try to take the guns away from people that should have the guns, or if there are any human beings out there that should have the guns, you don't take the guns away from those people.
Mm-hmm.
Because the guns are out there, and the bad people are going to get the guns. Mm-hmm. And they already have the guns. So
that's why I think it's ludicrous, some of the businesses that say, we don't want you to carry guns. So the first thing, when I look at a storefront that says, not allowed to carry in here, who's that going to affect? The law-abiding citizens are going to leave it in the car.
Right.
The criminals are going to look at that and say, wow, I can walk in here. There's nobody going to contest me, and I can do what I want. It's freedom. It's free reign.
You're right.
But, and kind of like, I'm just personally against, I don't like open carry. I don't like people open carrying a weapon because I think it draws so much attention to it. Conceal it, because, I would think that if I'm a criminal casing a place and walk in, I see somebody with a gun on the hip, guess what? You're my first target.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I would think. I don't think like a criminal. Maybe I do. Maybe I don't know. But hopefully I don't.
Well,
But-
no, that's
But I think when you have open carry and you're advertising it, you're asking for problems. It's like I would rather
Yeah.
just keep it covered, keep it in the blank, keep whatever, and then if you need it, hopefully you don't ever need it.
You know what? You're right, because even a few times that I've gone like the gas station and stuff, and find myself different hours of the day and night, and going to the gas station, there's somebody in front of me. I see the pistol on their hip, and I'm in a gas station in Elyria or in Lorraine, and it's 10 o'clock at night or whatever, and okay, now I'm looking at somebody that has deadly force on their hip. I see it. It's right there. So if I can see that and I'm not a threat, well, what if somebody comes in who has deadly force in their back pocket and they're not showing it and they're planning to rob? It's just like, okay, this is going to be a shootout now. And, again, it gets into, I'm confident knowing that with what I can do with my bare hands, I can take care of myself. But, when it comes to a weapon, it puts, in my opinion, too much power in the hands of too many people that don't know how to wield it.
Right.
And it gets back into the discipline and the training, like we were talking about. When you go to the bars at night at 2 a.m, it's not the guys and the gals that train in MMA and train in combat that are pushing over the tables and getting into fights at night. We're the ones that are breaking that stuff up. Why? There's literally a video of a 6-year-old redhead girl making me tap out on the internet right now. How can I act like a badass? How can I do that? I can't. But make no mistake, put your hands on the people that I'm with, we can figure it out. It's the people that have the training, the people that have the discipline, the people that not only know this weapon, but they can take the weapon apart blindfolded, and they go to the range, and they're going to the target range with moving targets, and those aren't the people that are gangbanging and taking over the liquor stores at night.
Nope.
They're the ones that have their weapon on their ankle, and they go to the mall in Florida, and some guy comes in there with a knife and starts stabbing people, and they put the threat away. That's who that person is.
Right.
I want that person with a gun all day long.
100%.
All day long. I want that person with a gun in a school. I want that person with a gun in an airport. I want that person with a gun at the grocery store. Why? Read the news. People walk around and do crazy stuff. And there's also a lot to be said when people aren't trained. In most people, in public, if some crazy shit goes down, they're just going to freeze.
Right.
They're not going to do anything. You go to a mall or like the famous one here in Ohio, where you go to the grocery store and you have the knife and you're walking around stabbing. There was a video of that woman walking around for minutes in that grocery store, just holding a 6-inch blade, walking around before she followed the mother and the kid outside and stabbed the
That's
kid.
one in North Olmsted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like, this person is walking through the grocery store for a good 5 to 10 minutes just with carrying this open blade. And I'm watching this video thinking, if I was in the store and I turned around and I saw somebody doing that, well, I'm going to hand the phone to my girlfriend and I'm going to say, you call 911, and I'm going to take that cart and I'm going to use, no, you don't work here. You're not an employee. You're somebody that has a blade out in the open. You're not stable at all. And here's the good news. I know how to stop you before you kill a 3-year-old, which is what that person did. Now,
Yeah, and that actually hit close to home. My niece was good friends with the mother of the 3-year-old.
no kidding.
Grew up with her.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I didn't personally know that, but it's, yeah.
It's when you hear about things like that, and again, it's not about being a superhero. It's not being a badass or being a tough. It's like, you know what? Okay.
It's about protecting your fellow man. It's about protecting the
Correct.
people around you.
I'm trained. I know what to do, and I know how to take. Especially when you take a look at that woman, that's not somebody who's fit. That's not somebody who's trained. That's somebody who's sick.
Yeah.
And guess what? If you're sick, my shopping cart's going to put you down. And you can go ahead and put me on the news. And as a white man, and that was not a white woman, if I went and put a car, and you put me on the news about, you can go ahead and call it a hate crime. Don't care, because that kid would not be dead. And just like the case of the guy in the New York subway, who choked out the guy on the subway, and they're trying him for murder.
Right.
That guy was harassing and hurting people that entire ride. And I'll tell you this right now. If any of you are ever on a subway or in a bar or on an airplane with me and somebody starts acting like that, you better be thankful that I'm sitting next to you. And I'm going to do something about it. And I'll say it in front of a microphone. I'll say it in front of a camera. I'll say it in front of a microphone on the stand. I learned how to use my hands because the bottom line is I don't give a damn how big you are. I get my hands around you. I can put you down.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means I'm going to put you down because you're not going to hurt anybody else, then I'll suffer the consequences after that.
Yeah.
You know, it's just part of when I'm coaching, especially if I'm teaching somebody how to fight and teaching somebody how to punch and kick and strangle and do all these moves, I'll say over and over again, you know, I'm going to train you. I don't care if you get into a ring or cage. If you do, great. I'm preparing you. What I care about is two things. Number one, you use this to help somebody. And number two, if you like this and you enjoy it, teach somebody, share it.
Right.
That's it. You know, I feel like there's a responsibility. You know, I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I'm trained. And if something like that goes down, yeah, you know what? Sorry. It's weird because when I do travel a lot and I'll do certain things and I'll get into airports and certain like that, and I can always tell. I can always look across the room and see like, okay, this person's trained. This one isn't. This person here could be a problem. This one's probably not sober. I mean, you see all that type of stuff from a mile away.
Right.
And again, I'm of the opinion that if you're trained in that, then it's a responsibility to help people out when you can.
Mm-hmm.
When you can,
Mm-hmm.
anyway.
No doubt.
But anyway, I get long. I read it for over 3 hours now.
Dude,
man.
this has been fun discussion though. But
Yeah.
you do a great job hosting
Thanks.
the podcast. Ask great questions and
Appreciate it.
have great opinions on things. And you know, whether we difference in opinion, you know, it's one thing that we can always be friends. And I like surrounding myself with people of
Mm-hmm.
different ideas because I like listening to the different ideas. I
That's
like
how you
hearing
learn.
their perspective. That's how you learn.
Yeah. How you
And that's
grow.
and how you think. But you
Yeah.
know, it's like, but I think it's funny how one side, you know, I'll have conversations on Facebook with different people that it's just funny to me is that how one-sided that they can be when it's more, well, you know, oh, if you listen to Fox News, you're an idiot. No, wait a minute. I mean,
See-
you know, I think there's been Fox News has been right on a lot of things when they came out early.
Everything? No, but a lot. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they've been right on the collusion thing. They've been right on Russia.
Mm-hmm.
They've been right on the Hunter laptop. And there's
again-
numerous things that they have done right.
Right. And
That-
again, the people that have been wrong, no apologies
No.
at all.
No.
People that have been wrong about this.
they double down.
One of my favorite videos is the one of Rachel Maddow talking about the vaccine. How, you know, if you take it, it doesn't go from this person to this person, and
Well, I'm
apologies.
still waiting for the collusion evidence from Adam Schiff. It
There
keeps
is
talking
none.
about, I've got the evidence.
no, there is not. Well,
I'm waiting for it.
Well, you know what actually happened with that is the Durham report came out, and actually Hillary Clinton had to pay a fine because it was her team that made all that
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
But you won't hear about that on MSNBC.
No.
But they actually had to pay a fine. And it's interesting because I'll get around some people and I'll say, I'll mention something like that, like, how about the Durham report? And they'll look at me like, Scott, what's the Durham report and how do you know about it? Well, I listen to people that are right.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, the people that I listen to, they're not all on this side or here. I just keep it real simple. It's like people ask me, are you conservative or are you liberal? My answer is, yeah, sure. And they're like, what are we talking about? Because if you break into my house, they're going to carry you out. So
I'm breaking into my house. I'm pretty conservative.
I'm pretty conservative, but at the same
If
time,
we're talking about, hey, what you need to do is,
right?
Scott.
Just saying, like, you break into my house, they're going to carry you out, and they're probably going to carry you out cold. That's the way it goes. But at the same time, if you if you are a man and you identify as a man and you want to marry another man, I don't care.
I don't care either.
Look, as far
I
as
don't
I'm
care
concerned, if I'm not invited in the room, it's none of my business.
Right.
And why should I even know about your sexual proclivity? Why would I even know that? Why would I even care?
Why should it? Why should the other stupid thing to me is why should anybody care? Why should anybody put violence against people because they choose something that's not going to hurt me in the long run?
Well,
I
you're
don't
right.
care.
You know, the idea to take the time to hate somebody just because of who they lay down with or their skin color, especially, it's stupid because if you take the time to get to know somebody, there's a lot of other good reasons to hate somebody.
Well, religious principles just say to love. Jesus said to love everybody.
True.
It's just like, and he didn't say this. Now, God says some interesting things about homosexuality, but it's not. I'm not the judge. I'm not the executioner. It's not my. It's not my role. I don't care what you think. I'm going to respect you. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to care about you. All right, but don't ask me to say that something is normal, or that really may or may not be. I mean, you can do what you want.
Well,
I'm not going to judge you for it. It's not my role.
Again, it gets back into. There's a great cartoon where there's somebody who at one point in time they're kind of leaning toward the left, and the left just keeps going. And here's the deal. Okay. When you talk about the left, you're talking about two words, the progressive movement. Mm-hmm. Progressive movement. It means it just keeps going. Mm-hmm. At no point does it stop. No. So once again, I remember in the 80s, like, should gay people be married? No. In the 90s, I don't care. And in the 80s, should people be able to smoke pot? No. 90s and 2000s, who cares? And then it turns into, okay, well, wait a minute. That human being was swimming on the men's team last year. Or it turns into, wait a minute, drag queen story hour for kindergartners.
Yeah, no. It's
at some point, and then you just kind of turn around and you're like, what is going on here? Like, you're a bigot.
You're a bigot.
Like, what's going on here?
Well, at what point am I responsible to teach whatever in my home different principles? Where does school stop, and where does home upbringing and principles within the home begin?
As a non-parent, my opinion can only go so far on that, and I don't want to. And my opinion can only just be that because I can say whatever I want because I don't have a stake in the game.
Yep.
My opinion, okay, and I said this when Chris came on the show. Growing up, I can't remember a single teacher ever saying who they're going to vote for, mm-hmm. or getting into anything that would be considered remotely political. At best, we had a picture of Reagan hanging up in the room or in the school because he was the president at the time. But that would be it. We would learn about the election is coming up and this is how to do it, and it was all very pragmatic.
It wasn't slanted.
No,
there was no agenda.
Great, yeah, right. Not at all. And it's look, and it gets into. There are some groups of people on this planet that for a long time were figuratively and sometimes physically really held back. Mm-hmm. You could look at from Rock Hudson all the way. I mean, there's a long history of that. I understand that. And again, back into the boat going back and forth, it has gone from the Rock Hudson days to now it's payback time. Mm-hmm. And when you look at a lot of media, a lot of entertainment, there are a lot of people with alternative lifestyles. And again, and I'm a person that's been around that world for a long time. I get it. I understand it. And for the longest time, if you were part of that industry that millions of people around the world were enjoying, but you had to shut up about what you're into in your private life. I understand how hurtful that could be. But now it's turned into, I'm going to use my weapon, or I'm going to use my sexual proclivities as a weapon against you. And if you're not completely 100% down with it, then you're going to be canceled, or you're going to lose your job, or you're going to whatever. It's insane. Yeah. It's absolutely insane.
Well, and I think that it comes back to what the election was about. I think people are waking up to that. You've got the middle You've got one side that's always going to vote one way. You got another side that's always going to. It's that middle ground that,
which is where I'm
I think,
in the middle there.
Yeah, and I think people kind of looked at it and said, this is getting insane. This is just some of the stuff that we're dealing. The ideals, the ideologies are insane.
And the gaslighting.
I'm not against. I think it's time for a woman president.
Yeah, I have no problem with that at all.
I just didn't think that was the right woman.
Give us a qualified, real good. I mean,
well, how can you go from I can't remember the exact number, but I think it was like 27% approval rate as a vice president, that all of a sudden this is our girl? That made no sense to me.
They had no choice. They had to.
Well, but all of a sudden, all this,
right.
This,
well, it didn't add up.
It was overnight.
People.
It was like everybody is like, she's our hero. She's the savior. She's gonna. Right. I'm like, well, what has she done? What has she done?
Not much.
But
they were saddled with her. There's nothing else they could do.
Right.
Because, well, Joe held on as long as he could, and then it got to the point where them not having any primaries was a big problem.
No doubt.
It was a big problem because they could have had who knows who could have came up through that. There are some good quality people in the Democratic Party that could have come up and made an impact.
Well, I think Shapiro. I think Shapiro in Pennsylvania. I think 4 years from now. Yeah. I think 4 years from now, J.D. Vance versus Shapiro is going to be an interesting.
I think so too.
And I think it's going to be the first time that we've got people that have backgrounds.
Yeah.
That have results. That have
and those two on a debate stage would be very interesting.
I think it's been interesting the last 4 or 5 elections. And you sit down and you got to think, out of 300 million Americans, this is our choice.
Right.
And
everybody seems like that.
I'm going to say this for the record, and I've said this before. I am not personally a Trump fan. I would like his ideas. I like the idea of America first. I like the idea of securing the border. I like the idea of what he did with the economy. I remember when I could put gas in my car and I could actually afford it. I remember when we could go get groceries and you can afford it. But anytime that you have, like the pandemic changed a lot of things, but anytime inflation, the definition of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. Mm-hmm. And when you sit here and dump stimmy checks after stimmy checks after stimmy checks into the economy, and it's going to raise the prices of everything, and then people stand back and are like, well, what happened? Well, most people don't understand that. That's basic economics.
Agreed. And at the same time all that's going on, and we're being told that everything's fine, and in the same breath turning around talking about how there's another $100 billion that just went to Ukraine.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So for people to turn around and say, I can't fill up my tank, how much money just went over there? For what?
And we got veterans living on the streets, but yet we're paying for people to come across illegally. It's madness. It's literally, and I think that hopefully, winning both houses and having the presidency, that we can turn the heat off of this liberal boiling frog and get things a little bit more sane and under control, and see where it goes.
A little back to pragmatic, a little more. A good example for that would be if you watch a lot. I don't watch a lot of actual just like TV, but if you watch commercials today, a good tell of where we are as a society is watching commercials. And growing up back in the day, I would see like commercials for Subaru, and they'd be talking about powertrain warranties and gear ratios and torque and horsepower and all this. And now when you see a commercial for Subaru, it's talking about how they're made with love, and they show like little puppies and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: is Subaru really made with love? Because last I checked, they also make attack helicopters.
I had a Subaru.
So what is it?
I had a Subaru for about 6 months, and it was a newer vehicle, and literally between oil changes, my oil pressure light is coming on. Before that, and I'm taking it into them, we're doing testing, and they said, well, that falls under normal standards. I said, not for me, you can have it back, and I got into something else, but I don't know.
Well, you get it, though. I mean,
there's a lot of them out there, but it didn't work out for me.
Well, I tell you what, there's I think that to sum it up and just bring it to take a step back and look at everything from 1,000 miles away when you're talking about the things that we've been talking about here, is whether it be personal goals and the mind versus the body. Also, saying one thing, behaving another way, politics and this and that.
Right.
In the end, as a species, we're either going to have to come together and agree on just what the fuck reality is.
Well, it's all relative, right? Reality according to who, right?
Right, and that's my point. That's going to be the argument. It's like the reality of if I hit you in the face, it's going to hurt. How about that reality?
How about you're a trained guy? I don't want you hitting me in the face. Well, as big as I am,
Well, but the point is that the reality of it is you can have all the good vibes in the world, but like I can run a commercial and talk about how I'm going to sell this my Subaru with puppies and with love, or I can show the video of how we're making attack helicopters to go in and eviscerate human beings in a split second. So am I really about the good vibes, or do I want to get paid?
Yeah, right.
And that's way a lot of the corporate stuff is kind of going today too. They kind of stick their lick the thumb and stick it up in the air and see which way the wind's blowing. It's like, okay, we need to follow this agenda or this agenda, and then all of a sudden that agenda isn't working. Ask Hollywood how it's going in with some of the shoving down the throat of the, for lack of a better term, the agenda. Or the message, or whatever the hell you want to call it. People have had enough, and we want to be told good stories with good writing and good acting and good visuals, and the idea that people are turned off with, I don't want to get hit over the head with whatever your message is here. I just want to sit here in front of a screen for 2 hours and forget about what I'm going through.
Right.
That's it. And that's when you have the certain messages from certain movies, and then you have Deadpool and Wolverine just come out and they just they break the internet because they just go back to just having fun.
Right.
There's always a good story that can be told when you're talking about victims and things, but in the end, we all love the hero story. We like the story of the person who has to overcome, the person who has to endure, the person who has to discover something. I mean, that's the greatest storytelling. When it comes to storytelling, the villain is always the one who's focused and driven and completely into exactly whatever it is their goal is, and they don't see themselves as the villain. Right. The hero is the one that's confused and not sure and has to overcome something and doesn't know their destiny. But they're not shovel and shoehorned into this, and this, which is a political agenda to make it fit into this narrative. Just tell a story.
Well, there's so much junk on TV and stuff coming out of Hollywood anymore. It's kind of, I don't like sitting down watching agendas. I want to watch a struggle victory story. I want to watch an overcoming story. And some of my favorite movies is the Kendrick brothers that have put out movies, and they're more Christian based movies. But I watched one, Overcomer, last night that I've totally forgot had come out. I never went and saw it.
Did they do one about rugby?
Not sure about rugby. There was one. This one in Overcomer is about a cross country girl that was didn't know her father and was raised by grandmother and was a kleptomaniac, was stealing everything, and then got introduced to, got her life changed, got a chance to meet her father, who he in itself had his own issues, and was a drug abuser and now. Diabetic, lost his eyesight, was kind of on a deathbed, and got the chance to actually meet his daughter and coach her to a state, because he was a cross country runner, and she got into cross country and overcame a bunch of stuff and ends up winning the state champion. It's a feel good movie.
It's awesome.
But watching her grow and change, I mean, those are the stories that I want to see. The Kurt Warner story. That's a movie that I want to see yet.
That just came out.
Yeah, last year I think, and that's next on the list.
One that I mean, it's a throwback, but it's one of my all-time favorites, and I've sat in here and watched it on the big screen a couple of times. Rudy.
Oh my God! Yeah.
It's
such a classic too.
But all that kid wanted to do was play. That's it. That's all he wanted. You talk about before, where you see somebody with these incredible physical gifts. Don't care.
Yeah.
And here's a kid. They said in the great line in the movie, "You're 5 foot nothing. You're 100 nothing."
Yeah.
And you don't have a speck of talent in you, but you went toe to toe with the #1 team in the nation.
Yep, and yeah, hung out with some of the best players and the best athletes, and to even get a chance to run on that field one time.
Great story.
And yeah, I mean, it just goes to show that the winning spirit isn't necessarily the guy that's. I mean, I wasn't a dominant force at Youngstown State. I was a role player, and you know, it's a funny story.
Sir, you have two championships rings sitting right here in front of me, and I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to wait.
No, it's a funny story. Is that I had 13 career catches. I had 2 touchdown catches, and they happened to be in a playoff game. And the funny thing is, I get this media guy 10 years ago, and I did a control F, put my name. It's like, is my name in this history thing at all? And it turns out it was in the record book that my 2 touchdown catches happened to be in a playoff game, and I'm tied with 4 other guys that have 2 touchdown catches. So I'm in the record book at YSU.
Wow.
So we had a reunion several years ago, or a few years ago. It was a 25th reunion of our 91 team. And Tress was the president of the university, and he hosted at his house. We're all sitting there. And we had a minute, and I said, "Hey, Coach, I've been thinking, Coach, Mark's in the Hall of Fame, Tamron, all these big legends that played at YSU. These guys were the ones that really made it happen." I said, "Hey, Coach, I don't know if you know this, but I'm in the record book with 2. I'm thinking, Coach." He turned around and was shaking his head. And I'm just like, what? It was funny.
If you don't ask,
Right.
you know what I mean?
That's the number one rule in sales, right? If you don't ask for the sale, you never get it, right?
You
But
got to
it was
ask, of course.
But it was a lot of fun. And
That's awesome.
Scott, we could talk all day. You're
can.
so interesting to talk to, for
thanks,
sure,
man.
And
I'll tell you what.
Thanks for inviting me out.
I can't thank you enough for coming on. We got one more salute right
Oh my
here.
goodness!
Cheers.
Salute.
Yes to you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, John Quintana.
Oh, absolutely, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you much.